Hi friends, Christy Tagey here, your host for the Productive Passions podcast. Here we're talking with people who have taken a chance on themselves to follow what they're passionate about. People who have started new careers, founded companies, and even investors who share their stories. This podcast is different. It highlights the people, the work, the struggles and failures, but also the successes and wins. Imagine growing up in a shelter to escape an abusive father and watching your mom fight for safety and survival. For Roswitha Verwer, that was reality. What could have been a story of hardship that held her back instead became the foundation of her resilience. She turned trauma into strength. And today, she's not just surviving, she's leading. Roswitha is the founder and CEO of Yoni Health and Yoni Global, two groundbreaking companies that are reimagining how women understand and care for their bodies. With Yoni Health, she's introducing a device that integrates advanced pH sensing technology and precise temperature monitoring, delivering real-time insights into vaginal and reproductive health, something that's been overlooked in medicine for far too long. And with Yoni Global, she's building a wellness and lifestyle brand that empowers women through holistic care rituals and respect for the planet. From a childhood marked by trauma to becoming an admired founder, earning awards, investment, and recognition, Roswitha's story is one of extraordinary grit, vision, and accomplishment. She's no shrinking violet. And today, she's here to share how she's breaking barriers, empowering women, and reshaping the future of healthcare and wellness. Roswitha, you are the founder and CEO of Yoni Global. Is that correct? Yes. What is Yoni Global? What do you guys do and what do you aim to do?
Yeah, so the overall company is Yoni, and we divided by Yoni Global and Yoni Health. Yoni Health is our medical device. So we're basically developing a medical device for vaginal health and fertility. So for the first time ever, we women are able to measure our vaginal health from the comfort of our home with a minimum invasive device that is measuring our overall vaginal health. The data then goes to your phone, a personalized application, and on a daily measurement, we can track a monthly overview. On top of that, we will also focusing on lifestyle and well-being because we all know how much is that affecting stress and influences on the vaginal health. And Yoni Global is our e-commerce business, and it serves actually as an early launch pad for our medical device to educate the market, grow revenue, and also focus on community building. So that's actually, it merged together, but we have separate focus points under Yoni. We all know right now that startup life is hard and building a startup life in med tech devices, of course, even harder. Imagine for vaginal health and fertility. So I thought early on, okay, what can I do while we are developing to already build the trust with our audience, to get our name out and to already provide organic and sustainable products for our target audience. And our target audience is women 25 to 45. So while we actually provide organic and natural solutions for often uncomfortable situations like period care and anxiety and well-being and pregnancy and postpartum, they automatically are aware that we are developing a medical device as well.
What is the information? What is the data that women will get from the medical device?
Yes. So from the medical device itself, we're measuring pH and temperature. These are really important and key biomarkers to understand your vaginal health. And within your menstrual cycle per week, these are also changing. So we will be the first one to actually pinpoint where you are. And what is really critical in this aspect is that it's different per ethnicity as well. Meaning we will be the first device ever who can focusing on different ethnicities on a daily basis. And we're not replacing any clinician. We're actually just focusing on giving a shorter gap with information and the data. And the data that we're going to collect is, of course, really important future on for pharmaceuticals and research facilities, etc. Because, I mean, imagine we launch in Europe and etc. Then the data points we collect on a daily basis. That's a lot of big, important information. Also for PCOS and endometriosis patients, of course. So those are the two key biomarkers. And with that, we can actually focusing on the overall vaginal health. So how is your pH level? When are you ovulating? When is your menstrual cycle? And basically these indicators we can actually focus on a daily basis.
So you're not only providing information to women about their own bodies, but also the information that you are gathering can be used, like you talk about, for research. How important is that for women's health And is there anything else that's collecting that information? I'm fascinated that you said by ethnicity.
Yeah. I mean, of course, there are indirect competitors that are on the market focusing on microbiome, but none is actually real-time results per individual with an application. So not only is the data collected from the vagina itself, we also focusing on lifestyle and well-being because stress and sexual partners and also medication, everything is influencing vaginal health. So with that pattern recognition, we actually have a lot of important data that we can really make big impact in. And I think that we cannot even comprehend or grasp the actual things that we can do with the data itself. And that's, of course, where also the stakeholders come in place to help us guiding this important and amazing journey. And I mean, of course, we find it really sad that it's never been focused on. Luckily for us, we are able to do so. But of course, it would be better if it would already been focused on for multiple decades. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So we are really proud and grateful that we are the ones that able to do so.
And I'm grateful that you made the decision to take this on because it hasn't been going on for decades. I'm older than you are. And it's not something, first of all, that we spoke about very openly. Second of all, I've not heard of any conversation such as this to provide women that information themselves, but also then to use it sort of for the greater good for women in the future, for my children, for my grandchildren.
Yeah.
How important was that for you when you started to think about putting this company together?
So the critical aspect within women's health and basically the lack thereof, I was exposed to that really early on because unfortunately I grew up in safe houses and women's shelters due to abusement. So I was really heavily exposed to the problems in women's health and how lifestyle is influencing our vaginal health because almost 9 out of 10 women there had issues with their vaginal health. I was really young, but of course, later on, I recollected all these memories. And then I myself, unfortunately, experienced the imbalance in the pH and how there is such a lack of information and education within the current healthcare environment. And also depending on which country you are, because I've been to the Netherlands, been to New York, been to Budapest. And especially within Hungary, I realized, okay, there's such a lack within educational aspect for the vaginal health and pH. And through the misdiagnosis and receiving the wrong medication, I really thought during COVID, okay, we need to change that. I need to design something and develop something that we are finally able to understand what is happening with our own body, because I think that's why it's often really uncomfortable having this conversation with your gynecologist or IVF clinic. And many times there's already a bias, there's a taboo, we feel uncomfortable, we get prescribed many different creams and pills and these eggs, and it's just really horrible to go through without even knowing if it's working. So I thought, okay, what can I design? And of course, the first idea I had wasn't immediately our device. Actually, the first idea I had was lingerie with a chip, and actually Whoop now has that. So it's funny to see that such an established company did that. So it actually trickled down into the device that we're currently having. So yeah, basically, when I did my corporate journey, I just realized later on, okay, what can I do that really can put my traumas in something so dedicated and powerful to help women, but still use all the knowledge I have with scaling startups in Europe and in the US. And that's actually how Yoni Global evolved. And my mother was also personally affected by IVF situations and problems. So I really took it from a personal perspective and lifestyle. And I think that's why my dedication also really comes from, because I've seen those women. I've been one of those women, and I lived with those women for many decades. So that's why it's such an important mission for us.
It strikes me that as you're still a young woman, that you've been through so much, and yet you're taking what probably, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what must have been a very hard, if not traumatic experience, and creating something that will help women like you, like your mother, all of those years ago. What about those circumstances? Because we know there are women and children currently living in shelters of all kinds. What is it about that environment that impacts their vaginal health? And I think when we think about women and children in shelters, we're more worried about the food, about their safety. But is it a luxury to think about their vaginal health too, that we should be thinking about it?
Definitely, because that actually, if you don't think about it and don't focus on it, it actually influences fertility and the lack thereof as well. So when I was there, of course, it's a couple of decades ago, but even here in Budapest, I know with the women's shelter, there was a lack of access to period care products. So we donated actually through Yoni Global. We donated a lot of these period care products. The women's shelter I was in was for abusement. So it's not a women's shelter necessarily. It's like private. No one knows where you are. I don't know exactly the English word of it. But there, it was really horrible because the women from war countries were there. And it was really too much people in a small space, let's say. And you're happily that you're safe from the abuser, let's say, but you're also taken out of your life abruptly. The police took me randomly. I couldn't say goodbye. Nothing to my life was dumped in the shelter with my mother. So there is no psychological help. There was no training how to get back to life. So regarding finances, so regarding job application, regarding education, nothing was given or handed to us. And through this journey and through this horrific things you're going through, everything is eventually influencing and affecting your vaginal health. And if you don't take care of it and you don't understand it, and it's not only regarding the traumas, but also the wrong medication, no access to products. So there's a lot of things going on in the shelters that are not okay. Unfortunately, the shelter I was in, some women had their sons, but they could not be older than 18, obviously, because everyone there was abused by a man. But then the men that were younger, let's say boys, they also sexually harassed, for example, younger girls. So there's a lot going on in the shelters that's not being talked about and not being spoken about. And that is one of the reasons that with the profit eventually from our device, I would like to build safe houses and women's shelters in underserved countries to really make sure that it will not happen again. And no women that should be there should go through this, because it's already hard enough and horrible enough to be in these places, and that you don't even have access to basic things like hygienic care and also period care is just honestly ridiculous. So yeah, that's why it's really important to focus on it.
You know, I think about just growing up as a female and learning about a period and how traumatic that could be depending on how you learn about it. I can't imagine that, first of all, your biggest worry and your family's biggest worry is your safety. Now, those safety needs are met, and this, to have the conversations to provide the care that was needed probably was not on the top of anybody's mind. So unfortunately for you, you experienced it firsthand, but fortunately for women and girls moving forward, they will have you having that experience to talk about it, to make sure that people aren't forgetting that this is a real issue that needs to be discussed, and these girls and women need to be taken care of.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you for being that.
Thank you.
I want to ask you about the medical community. When you go in and you talk to people about what you're doing, are they accepting of you and excited, or are they, do you ever get, that's not your place, you don't have a medical background?
Yes.
What is the reception?
In the beginning, it was, of course, harder because, good luck starting a medical device, not coming from a medical environment. But because I have my dedication and like the urge and the drive to never give up, it was really hard. I'm not going to lie about that. I mean, to reach out to hospitals and like gynecologists and IVF clinics, and just, I realized that because of my corporate life, I had a lot of really strong connections. And then I switched to medical health and I realized, I don't have any connections here. But what I do have is the knowledge how to build that and how to set that up. So I just duplicated the knowledge in the medical environment. And now, actually, early on, we got a relationship with Centron Europe. That's the only company in the world who has a glass-free pH sensor technique. And we are developing our device together. Slowly but steady, I got the right stakeholders. And the further we came in the journey regarding our patent applications and regarding awards that we won, one thing that's really focusing on from Yoni is also the branding and the marketing. I want to be out there as much as possible. Because educational purposes. B, it's vaginal health. We already need to fight the taboos as well. And C, it's all really important for the validation if we go to the stakeholders and investor conversation. But yes, many times I got the conversation that, but you're not from medical. How are you going to do this? But if you really think about it, scaling a startup and building a global company, you don't have to have all the experience yourself. That's also impossible. What you need to have is, of course, the right team. to do so. And I'm really proud of my team that is in the US and in Europe that have these experiences.
I love that you talk about that you don't have to have the experience and the total know-how to start something. So we have an idea of why you started this. What was your background and what did you need to get this all started and to even consider a medical device?
Yeah, so my background is in international business. I also scaled startups already in Europe and the US, but it was mainly regarding to private equity as well and marketing, etc. So then I just learned a lot. To be honest, I also worked for a lot of toxic male individuals within startups. So I really also learned how not to do that and how unlearn how to be a founder myself. Because if you're so long in a toxic corporate environment, that's what you have in your system. So to change that and to actually build a company, because me as a woman, I'm a woman first, of course, then I'm a founder. I cannot build a company on women's health with the system of a toxic corporate environment. And I'm quite young still, so that was also a lot of unlearning and healing through developing Yoni. I was really comfortable by hearing no, for example, with investments, because the more you get comfortable hearing no, the closer you are to a yes. So that's one thing I needed to learn, because in the beginning it was horrible.
I think that is such an important point. And for people starting out that are hearing a lot of no's, I think what you just said is very important. So will you say that again?
So the more no's you get, the closer you are to a yes. And honestly, if you think about it, let's say you are 10 no's away from that one yes, because one yes is all you need. The more you want to have that no. And of course, certain no's, you should go into conversation depending on their investment profile, of course, because you would not just like, okay, no, bye, depending on the no, of course, and the individual. But that's something that really changed my mindset, instead of taking it so personally and like, oh, you're not good enough, the company's not good enough, because we all know how this dark voice in our minds can go. Doesn't matter how big your goal or step is. If you just break it down in smaller steps, you can actually go through it. Doesn't mean sometimes it's easy, because reviewing all these patent documentations and doing all these things is quite uncomfortable. But again, because I listened to so many established founders, I learned as well that by being uncomfortable, you grow. Because if you're just continuously comfortable, there's no space to grow or evolve in. Of course, eventually it is, but you need to be uncomfortable, especially in a startup environment. There are so many new things that you need to go through. And the only thing to do so is just go through it.
I read at one point that you had an investor who was pretty disrespectful to you. And I'll let you tell the story, but if I'm not wrong, I believe you ended up telling them no. Is that correct?
Yeah. So
tell us a little bit about that.
It's important to also understand what kind of investor profile do you want. Because one thing that we always say within Yoni is that, okay, values first, money after. Because yes, the money is important, but we would rather have stakeholders who actually are in this environment and who can open up doors and who can guide us through the journey, because that's also beneficial for their return of investment. I was pitching, as you always do, and he was not listening. He was on his phone and he was really not listening. So then he asked questions. He was like, is this really a problem? And I was like, did you listen to my first slide? Did you
say that to him?
I said, we can go back to the first slide, because that's actually the problem statement, and we can go a bit more into that. And I also shared the deck up front. And then he asked questions, but the questions he asked was literally, let's say, competitor slides, market value slide. Everything was what he was asking was in the deck. So I was confused. So I asked him like, excuse me, like, did you really like read through the deck already up front, or did you listen to the pitch? And then he was like, he sent the questions, and I asked a question back, and he's like, why are you so aggressive? I said, no, I'm just asking you a question back, because I said, I respect your time, and if you want to ask me questions, what I just told you, and we can go over it again. He said, I don't have time for that. And he was just really intense with his energy. And I realized then as well that, okay, if it's already so much friction within this short conversation, it's not the right profile for us, and that's fine. So I said, okay, thank you, but I don't think this is going to work, because we are looking for a specific investment profile. Because I think what is important for startups as well, no matter how hard the journey is, I think signing a contract with an investor who really causes a lot of internal friction, personal friction, and also you don't know how it will go along the way, that can actually do a lot more damage than wait until you find the right investor profile.
That takes strength to
Yes,
walk away.
We are, of course, we're still fundraising. You learn a lot and you also really realize, okay, what kind of individuals do I want in the team? There's a difference between investors who really just want to support by money. They don't have background in medical, but it's totally fine, but it's to the goal. But they're not an active investor. Sometimes people would like to be an active investor. And if you then sign something with that individual, he'll be daily involved in your operations and in your team. And if that individual is not on the same frequency or doesn't understand or not similar with the same goals, that will cause a lot of friction. And I think that really disturbs the team as well.
I think that is such a good lesson. It sounds to me like we're having a class in startup. And that's such an important thing that you talk about, is really knowing who your investors are and what they will contribute or what they will detract from the work that you're trying to do. So kudos to you for standing up and saying that's not an appropriate one, because that's also hard. It's hard to walk away from money when you are trying to fundraise.
Yes. But again, values first, money after. That's, of course, how we scale Yoni. Another tip, I think, for the listeners is regarding advisory boards, because I learned a lot with advisors. And I also realized that not all advisors have the same intention and goals as when you hire them to be on your advisory board. Because for some people, it's nice to say I'm on an advisory board from an award-winning FemTech company. But then I've also actually stopped working with certain advisors, because what is important, what I always do is measure as well the milestone, time frame, milestone, value, deliverables. Because if this individual cannot connect me or the company to the right stakeholders or right investors, and he's not doing or she's not doing things, let's say, that you hire this individual to do, okay, but then why are you advising if you're not advising, right? Like the individual needs to be actively involved. Like my advisory board is really, really actively involved. I'm so proud of the advisory board right now, but I canceled the one that were not bringing any value to the company. So it's really important to also keep track on that, because it's hard, because you work with these individuals. They have what you think, so much entry point, so much door they can open. They have so much experience. So you're already younger. So to have these conversations with your advisory board that certain individuals are not doing enough, that alone is already really nerve-wracking and sometimes nauseating. But in the end, you really want to have a board that is actively involved, actively can open doors to you, and really wants to also help you instead of just take the equity. One thing to add, I think it's really important as a founder that you, of course, not only hire the advisors based on their name and their social presence and their LinkedIn connections, etc. You can make mistakes in that. I did. So we left these advisors out. But what we do, we have a bi-weekly meeting. Of course, my advisors are really strong. So I'm not oversaturating them with information and meaningless conversation or meeting. Upfront, I send a document with the points of discussion, kind of like to-dos per individual, or when I'm involved as well, with a date. So then the next bi-weekly, we can immediately see like where we're standing, what did we do. So it's just the same how you would do the operations, I think, with your team. But of course, these are much more high-level individuals. So the amount of information you need to filter down and just be strict, because all of them either run their own company or have multiple companies. So they have a small amount of time. And that time you need to really dedicate efficiently. But you need to track everything that you're discussing, and also the milestones that you're setting together. And that's why, of course, all the Q1, Q3 quarterly goals come into place with the advisors as well. And one thing that I love with my advisors, if it's really urgent, I can call them, they pick up, 5-minute conversation, like, hey, I need this. Can you help me? Yes. Okay, give me a day. So these are like really active involvement within the advisors. And some individuals in my advisory board, I speak on a weekly or daily basis, of course, from a financial investment perspective. And that's why it's important to find the right individuals who would like to be actively involved, that they get excited about the goals that you're trying to achieve together.
I think you've just taken that a step further. You're setting those expectations, but you're also on a regular basis visiting those expectations and those measurable goals and setting time frames, which I am confident is helping you move faster. You have been recognized. Yoni was recognized as a nominee for Best Tech Startup this year, 2025, and you made the G100 list of top women leaders globally. How do these accolades translate into real momentum for you?
Yes, I think from an internal perspective regarding my team, it gives us a lot of excitement, empowerment, like see what we're doing is meaningful and the hard work is paying off. Because hard work paying off doesn't always mean funding. There's a lot of other things that are clarifying that we are doing great work, that we are successful in these smaller milestones as well. And I think that's already results in having these accolades. Of course, it's really, really nice to also start cold reach out by saying that, hey, we are Best Health Tech Startup nominee. And so these things we really use for a branding perspective and marketing perspective as well. And then when you speak to certain stakeholders or investors or high-level individuals you would like to talk with, you often have 2 to 3 minutes to pitch them and to do an elevator pitch. So when you can start strong with these accolades, it's also really beneficial.
And congratulations, because I know that was well earned and that was hard work for you.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, actually, regarding the hard work, what I realized this year, because the thing is with the startup, and especially with the life I came from, with the personal dedication what many founders have, it's really hard to find the right balance between working hard and overworking and working from stress and anxiety and just you want to do everything because the work never stops. So one thing that I'm also really proud of that I want to highlight as well is that I really found my balance. And I also, through this hardship and through this journey into overworking and working 20 hours a day and sometimes like middle of the night, one of the reasons we also scaled quite fast. But then I realized I'm losing relationship with my family. I'm losing personal relationship. I'm losing the relationship with myself. So one thing that I'm also proud of that I call a success is that I have now a healthy balance between work and life.
So have you found that in taking better care of yourself that you're able to be more productive and a better leader?
Yes. In regards to my team itself, actually, I'm always really compassionate. I always want to make sure my team is okay and just tell me because I work with a lot of older individuals. So they have a family or wife or children. Like I want to make sure that they are okay first. And that is the thing. And I think that also trickles down back to my old life and my childhood is that for me, it was hard to also do that for myself. So that's actually where I learned and grow a lot. And the first thing is I want to make sure my team is mentally also okay. And if there are any problems that they feel comfortable enough to tell me and they would like to discuss it because without a team, you're like, good luck. I mean, I need my team to do this. So my biggest priority is that they are excited, that they feel valued and that they understand the mission. And it's really a team relationship with us. Like we really do this together. And I always thank them as well. And everywhere recordings or interview, whatever I'm doing, I really highlight that they are working so much. And I'm really, really proud of my team as well. Like I have amazing individuals in my team.
Who has had the most influence on you and do they know it?
I mean, I would not say people would say God at this point. I was baptized recently and I really became a Christianity and I really am a woman of God. So I think the most impact right now is my relationship with God. Yeah.
And my guess is he knows that when the founder life gets heavy, and we know it does, what's your go-to for processing doubt and fear? Is there a person you call, a ritual that centers you? How do you handle those heavy moments?
I used to say that I would speak to my friends or family, but now I pray. Now I pray or meditate. We women more have this gut feeling, like our intentions. If we really listening to ourselves and take a moment to sit still, our body often already tells the answer. When you take that second to pray or journal or walk even, whatever it is, to just have that moment of peace. And I think to find your moment of peace in the middle of the chaos, so it doesn't matter what happens in work or personal, first thing right now is I found my moment of peace. And I don't care if it's around me, it's total chaos, but through that, I realize how to make the right decision and how to calm myself down.
I want to switch gears for a minute and ask you, how important is the work you're doing now to men? Is this important to men?
Yes, I think yes, because knowing that there is such a taboo and lack of education, this is also specifically for men. So one thing that we would like to do future on when the device is on the market is to have the separate application so you can share it with your partner if you want to, because many times people have no clue and women often feel uncomfortable to talk about it. And especially when you have yeast infections in a relationship, there's such a extreme taboo on it. No one feels comfortable with that. I think with IVF or family planning, it's different because you want to do it together, but still, we would like to educate the male as well as the women. And many, for example, single fathers, when you have a teenage daughter who starts periods, like we start a bit older with our device, but I can imagine that whole conversation, there's so much uncomfortableness in it. We would like to really future on also emphasize the strength that men can have in this, as well in also having daughters, to educate them and opening up their life to being comfortable in these uncomfortable situations.
Are you looking for partnerships currently, or talking with companies currently about partnering to bring that information to their smart devices?
Yes. Yes. So we have a lot of ideas for that already. The first thing that we're doing right now is actually we're going to purchase the prototypes and we're going to test them in the lab for in vitro testing. So then we can move forward to TRL 3, 4, and 5 and actually get ready for clinical trials. When we are around clinical trials, these conversations are more than just ideas, because then we can actually have this conversation, find the right partners. Of course, I'm always happy to speak with any listener who has a company or would like to connect on any way, because even now or future wise, we're always open to connect. But eventually we can do so much with this data. And that's important to have already these early conversations. Actually, eventually I would also want to focus on menopausal women, because that's also really a really important target group. And that is our secondary target audience. So whenever we can and whenever we are able to, this data, and then also with our secondary target audience, that data, we can do so much. But of course, that's why the funding is so important, to actually carry us through the clinical trials and get to commercialization.
What are you looking for right now in terms of partnerships?
Yes, so in terms of partnership, of course, regarding the Yoni Global, I would love to be in contact with female companies focusing on period care or anything that is related to our sections on our website. So please have a look at yoni.global. Regarding partnerships in a medical field, what is of course most important, we having early conversations with companies who can help us through the journey of CE mark, FDA approval. We would like to work with lab testing and companies who can go from TRL 3 to 5. We already started this conversation with certain individuals and companies, so we would love to, of course, hear anyone that can help us through that. Regarding investment, that is, of course, most critical. So we have two options, either from a loan perspective or an equity perspective. And we are welcome to any individual who would like to invest and to support us. So that can also be women who are not, or men who are not from the medical environment, but just really want to start their first investment. So we have a loan part with an interest rate, and we paid it back upon completing the pre-seed round, and of course, equity perspective. But if you reach to investment at yoni.global, we are more than happy to share more in details information on these perspectives. But it's really exciting because we just had 3 angel investors from the Netherlands who did that on a loan perspective, and through that we were able to purchase the probe. So that's why we decided to do a lower entry point for individuals who just love to support us and really excited about what we're doing, or who see the amazing milestones what we're sharing online. You can find me on LinkedIn and also Instagram, Roswitha Verwer. And Yoni Health is on LinkedIn and on Instagram, and Yoni Global is also on Instagram and TikTok. There we do a lot of educational things as well. So yoni.global or yoni.health. And both of them are also websites. So yoni.global is their e-commerce business. Everyone who would like to support the FemTech company, also please make sure to order something, because it directly goes to the development of our medical device. Plus, you're planting trees in Tanzania and you find the best organic and sustainable products for your health. And if you want to learn more about their medical websites, please go to yoni.health.
Thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Thank you so much, Chris. First of all, thank you for having me. I really had such a fun time and conversation with you, and I really love your energy, and also the fact that you have this conversation with startups and female founders. I think it's so important. So really thank you for amplifying and also bringing our message out even more. So I really want to thank you, and I really had an amazing conversation with you.